Hi everyone. Tonight's dinner is an utterly delicious beef casserole, and you will notice of course that outside it's broad daylight and that's because I'm starting this at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm going to use the slow cooker, so it's going to cook over the next sort of 5 to 6 hours, so by the time it's done it's just going to be so delicious, so tender. And the great thing about the slow cooker of course is that you can actually put it on whenever you like. You can even put it on in first thing in the morning before you go to work, and so when you come home you've got an automatic function which will time the cooking and then keep it warm until you're ready to eat. On this occasion we're not at work, we're actually on the boat. As you can see, we've had a fantastic sail this morning down from Shore Island to, currently we're moored at Goldsmith Island, in the lee of Goldsmith, and it's good that we're in the lee of the island because it was a good 25 knot breeze on the way down, and it was raining, and it's still raining, but it's the perfect day for a casserole, and which is sort of a bit wintry. It is winter here in the Whitsundays, being June, so it's the perfect dish. So I'm going to make it's obviously beef casserole. So I've got a cut of beef, which is the cheapest you can buy. Okay, because you don't need a cut of beef that's particularly tender to start with. All the tenderizing is going to come in that sort of 5 to 6 hour cooking. So cheapest cut of beef that you can find, and there's a little bit of fat, as you can see in there, that marbling. Fat is absolutely fine. We've been told this lie for the last 50 years that fat makes you fat and gives you heart disease. No, it doesn't. So you're allowed a little bit of fat, okay? And that particular cut of meat, I think, is about $15 a kilogram, cheap as chips. And that amount of meat that I've got there, which is about 500 grams, will easily do, there's the two of us, Danny and myself, but in fact will probably do 4 people. So that's how inexpensive this dish is. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to just add a little bit of flour, just a little bit, just to coat the beef before it goes, and then I'm going to brown it in my casserole dish. So just make sure you wash your hands, of course, before you do this, which I have done, and just mix that flour, or mix the beef through the flour. Make sure that every bit of every chunk is coated. And what this flour is going to do is it's going to thicken up the sauce to a really nice gravy. Give that a warm up, and plenty of olive oil. So with that casserole dish nice and warm, I'm going to put my meat in, and all I'm going to do is just brown it. It's not quite up to heat yet, but it will come up there fairly quickly. And this process, the whole idea of doing this is to seal the meat, to keep all the goodness in, but all the flavours are still going to come out in the slow cooking process. So now, whilst that's happening, let's talk about the vegetables. In this dish I've got carrots that I've diced up. I've got a few potatoes. A few potatoes are allowed. Mushrooms, a bit of zucchini, and some capsicum. Just and roughly dice them. Okay, you want nice big chunks. I am going to use some onion, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to caramelize the onion after I have browned the meat and before I put all the vegetables back in. The other key ingredients for this dish are some stock. I'm using vegetable stock, but you can use beef stock, but that would be sort of, I guess, sensible being a beef dish, but I'm using vegetable stock. The reason why I'm using vegetable stock is because I only want half of it. I'm going to use the other half for my risotto, which I'm going to make tomorrow. And the other key ingredient is a little bit of red wine. And might as well open that now. And very important to check, of course, that it's okay. Just perfect. This one is a Grant Burge from the Barossa Valley in South Australia, once again, where Danny comes from. Best wines in Australia, and just because you're using it to cook, it doesn't mean to say you need to sort of scrimp on the quality. because you're going to use a third of the bottle for the cooking. You might as well drink the other 2/3 rather than throw it away. So it's got to be reasonably good for that purpose, and I can testify that that is the case. So that's now cooking nicely, and we just need to give that a little bit of a stir. Just make sure that it's browned. The outside of the meat is browned. But you don't need to cook it through, because that's what's going to happen in the slow cooking process. Now I'm using a cast iron pot for this. You can buy, of course, a slow cooker dedicated for that purpose, an electric one. I can't use an electric. Well, I can use an electric one, but not over sort of 6 or 7 hours, because I have to have it connected to 240 volts, and I don't have a 240 volt system on this boat whilst we're at anchor, unless I run the generator, which I don't want to do. Okay, if I'm connected to shore power, not a problem. Okay, so I'm using a cast iron pot, which is going to go in the oven, and this oven, although it's a very simple oven, actually has a slow cooker function on it, okay, which is the lowest setting of the oven. And as far as temperature is concerned, it's probably about 110 or 120 degrees. You don't want anything more than that, okay? So it's going to cook at about 110 degrees for about 5 hours, at least 5 hours, okay? Ideally, probably 6 hours. We're starting this a little bit late in the afternoon. I probably should have started about an hour ago. So we want to eat at sort of 7 o'clock in the evening. We've still got sort of 5 hours of cooking, which is more than enough, in fact. So that's browning nicely. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just chop my onions. I'm using a red onion. Doesn't matter. Brown onion, white onion, red onion. Cut that roughly. And the other thing we're going to do actually is we're going to add in 1 big clove of garlic. Just chop it roughly. That's going to go in with the onion after the meat. I'm going to take the meat out. And if you want to, you can put a little bit of chilli in. If you want to give it a little bit of the heat. I'm not going to bother, but actually there is one thing that I do need to put in, which will make it taste a little bit, just a little bit nicer, and that is just a bit of tomato paste. Just probably about just half of that, so a couple of teaspoons. Some people throw in a whole tin of tomatoes. I think that just makes it too tomatoey. So that's browning nicely, as you can see. All from red to brown. And it is really just the outside surface that you want to brown. You don't want to cook the meat through. Okay, so that meat is now nicely brown. I'm just going to set that aside. At the bottom of the pan is some sort of crusty bits from the flour, and you've got to be careful that that doesn't burn. I'm just going to add a little bit more oil, and then I'm going to throw my onions and garlic in, and they're going to sort of cook briefly, and they're going to caramelise. So just keep that. So just give that a stir. Turn the heat back up. So the preparation time, for this meal, what is it? 15-20 minutes. That's it. And as I said, you put it on before you go to work. You come back. No work to be done. It's all been done. Our onions are caramelised nicely, or caramelising nicely. The garlic is cooking. Don't overcook the garlic, because it will burn and then it will become very bitter. So now I'm just going to add my red wine, and as I said, about a third of a bottle. And you want to sort of just let that boil away and let the alcohol come off. And whilst that's happening, it's deglazing the bottom of this pan, which means it's getting off all of the crusty bits. And as I said, that will add to the flavour. So just give just a bit of a scrape with the end of your spatula. You can feel all those rough bits, just give those a good scrape. And it will also save you scrubbing the pan when you're done, which you don't want to do with a wrought iron pan anyway. You've got to be very careful that you don't scratch it. You can do this dish, even if you're underway, if you're sailing and you're underway, you can do this dish. Especially in this galley, it's very easy, because you can brace yourself here. You've got this handle here. This is the wonderful thing about this boat, and the other thing, of course, you've got a gimbal stove, so that allows you to, if the boat is heeling, you just take it off or put it on the gimbal. But since we're at anchor, I'm just going to fix it. So you don't have any excuses just because you're underway and you're heeling at sort of 15-20 degrees. And you're in a force 7 sea going across the Bay of Biscay or wherever you're going, you can still have this. Casserole. Okay, so that's doing nicely. One of the things I found some bok choy which I'm going to throw in, because, and that's the other thing, if you've got any old vegetables, well, not old to the point where they need to be thrown out, but you know, if they're looking a little bit tired, less fresh than they should be for other dishes, and this bok choy was left over from that nice Thai fish curry we made the other day. That could go in as well. I can just chop that roughly. And if you make too much, well, that's fantastic, because you can just put it in, you can have it another day as leftovers, or you can put it in the freezer and have it another day. So never throw food away just because you've made too much. Never throw food away. Okay, so that's reduced nicely. I'm going to add my stock now, just probably about a third of this. Some of that, over the next 5 hours or so, some of that is going to boil off. So you might just need to top it up, especially if it's looking a bit dry. You really only need to take it out on one occasion to have a look at it. And if it's looking a bit dry, you can just add a bit more stock. The other thing we can do is we're going to add some herbs. Okay, these are fresh from my garden down in Brisbane. Some rosemary is fantastic. Just put it in, and some bay leaf, a couple of bay leaves. Okay, that will add spectacularly to the flavour. Tomato sauce, we're just going to use a couple of, or tomato paste rather. Just going to add a couple of spoonfuls of that. Keep that for another time. Keep that for your bolognese sauce when you make a spaghetti bolognese. And now we can add our meat back in, and there's all those nice juices. You see that goes back in as well. And we can add our vegetables. That bok choy is going to wilt down, the leaves are going to wilt, the stalks are going to get nice and tender, and then we can add our vegetables. And that is a lot of food for 2 people. So, but as I say, I'm not going to let it go to waste if Danny and I don't eat all of this. It's certainly enough for 4 people there, and you can have it, as I say, for another meal. Maybe just another little bit of just a bit of a top up. And some salt and pepper. That's a little bit of seasoning. There's a little bit of salt in the stock, and that's it. And give it one more stir. Mix up that tomato paste, mix up the salt and the pepper and the herbs. And now she's ready to go in the oven. And the oven's already on. It's up to temperature. I've taken my little handle off the top for good reason, because I can't fit it in the oven with it on, so I've unscrewed that, which means it's going to vent some steam there, so that's why you're just going to need to be careful it doesn't dry out. So that's why you need to have one look at it. Well, if you had an enclosed top, you probably didn't need to do that. Okay, and that just goes. Fits beautifully in there, and 5 hours later it's all done. Don't forget to turn that off. I've left that on before, don't forget to turn that off. Cheers! Okay, so it's 7 o'clock, which is almost 5 hours since we last spoke, and I turned the oven off about half an hour ago, just to let it rest and to sort of get to sort of eating temperature. But the good thing is, for the last 5 hours, the whole boat has been infused with this beautiful smell of this casserole, and unfortunately you can't appreciate that, and you will be able to see, look at that. So that's, as you can see, has reduced in volume dramatically, and that's because of course the liquid in the vegetables has been taken out and the sauce is reduced. But just look at that, isn't that beautiful? Doesn't that look fantastic? And it, as I say, it is a real shame you can't smell it. Doesn't that look fantastic? So you've got that beautiful mixture of protein in the meat, you've got some carbohydrate in the vegetables, and you've got some fat that's come from the meat itself. That's it.